Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jacqueline Meany, and I will be moderating today's 45-minute webinar session. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We're excited to share an exclusive first look at RookAi, a new AI-powered review tool built specifically to support 510K and eStart submissions, with every review validated by a Rook regulatory expert. Before we get started, I just want to touch on a few quick housekeeping items. We'll save time for the live Q&A at the very end of this session, but feel free to submit questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A feature at the bottom corner of your screen. We will address as many questions as we can during the Q&A, but feel free to reach out afterwards. We will share contact information with you all at the end if you have any additional questions. Now it is my pleasure to hand it over to our webinar's presenters, Kyle Rose, CEO and founder of Rook Quality Systems, and Rook Quality Systems Director of Regulatory, Tyler Ting. And they will briefly introduce themselves before they dive into our featured presentation.
All right. Thanks, Jacqueline. Yeah, really excited to have everyone on today and to talk about the Rook AI. This is something that we've been working on for a while. Background on me. So I'm Kyle Rose. I'm CEO and founder of Rook Quality Systems. I've worked for over 20 years now in the medical device space. Started Rook going on 14 years ago. We work with all types of med devices. We work closely with everything from Fortune 500 companies to two-person startups supporting all of their quality, regulatory, clinical needs as they develop new medical devices and new medical technology. We've also supported NIH with multiple projects, including RADx supporting over 100 COVID diagnostic devices during the pandemic, and we are still, dedicated mentors to universities, hospitals, incubators, accelerators, all of these types of groups as well. Really wanting to help the medtech and med device community grow and stay focused on quality and regulatory foundations and ensure high quality devices are getting to the market. Alongside me today, we have Tyler Ting.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful that you get to join us for the debut of RookAi. I've been doing a lot of testing in the background. So I'm a regulatory affairs professional. So within the medical device space, I specialize in getting through the US FDA pathway for novel medical devices. And like Kyle said, helping out different entrepreneurs of all sizes, and not even just entrepreneurs, but middle and large scale manufacturers who are looking to get regulatory input for complex devices. I've done a lot of software as a medical device, which has its own complexities, but have a lot of work even in the COVID space or in implantables. And I've also done some work in international as well.
A quick overview of what we're talking about first, before Tyler dives in. So we've got the high level agenda. So today we're going to do common pain points of the 510K submission process and why we focused on this use case. There's a lot of AI tools out there. I feel like this quality regulatory tech file CER space is ripe for AI involvement, right? But we've evaluated a lot of tools. We've met with a lot of people that are developing tools and really felt like this device and an AI tool that we're showing today is kind of the first best fit for what companies need that we work with, what clients need, what their pain points are, things like that. So we'll talk about the common pain points for 510K submission. We'll review the Rook framework and how we work and how that ties to the Rook AI tool. And then we'll actually go through the AI tool. So we'll share some screenshots to talk through the tool and how it works. Next, we'll talk about the AI workflow. One thing that we've seen with the AI tools we've evaluated, AI tools that are in development, and people we've talked to is that, there still needs to be that expert review. And so that's one thing that we built into this is not only is it the AI tool, we also have the Rook expert review as well. So you have the regulatory expertise of the Rook team able to review out after the AI output. We'll talk a little bit about practical use cases and adoption, and then where Rook AI fits in and when you can start to use it. And then, as Jacqueline said, we have some time at the end for some Q&A as well. Just a high-level overview on Rook Quality Systems. So I mentioned earlier, been in business since 2012. So next year will be our 14th year in business. Our goal is really to simplify compliance, both quality and regulatory, to look at the regulations, look at the standards, and say, how can we make this process as efficient as possible for whatever stage company? So that really, focus was on startups when we first started, and now we've grown to support big and small companies. with their quality, regulatory, project management, clinical trials. All of these things are things that we can support and make more efficient for your device as you're moving through your path. Some of the actual consulting things that we support. So we do design file and technical file creation or remediation. We do QMS creation and maintenance, risk file creation as well. We handle a lot of regulatory submissions. I was actually trying to count up, how many we've done this year. I think it's at least 25 or more. So 2 or 3 regulatory submissions per month. So full regulatory submission prep, filing, pre-subs, de novos, international filings, all those things. We have a really strong software team as well. So within the group of our 40 consultants, about half of them are experts in software. So any SAMD, SIMD, cybersecurity, any device in this space, we have experts who can help not only define your regulatory path, but also help you document all the things that need to be done. And then we provide audit support as well. At some point, every med device company is going to be audited. You want to make sure you're ready for that and you have experts on your side. So we help get you ready for the audit, but also we can be there during the audit to support you and present the best path when you're going through that audit. So I'm trusted by over 300 medtech companies and continuing to grow. All right, Tyler, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Well, I want to talk about the 510K review briefly, just as an overview. Hopefully, everyone on the call is aware of what the 510K review is. It's the most common pathway for most of the medical devices that patients interact with on a day-to-day basis. It actually accounts for, I looked it up pretty recently, like 98% of all pre-market reviews by the FDA. So it dwarfs de novos and PMAs. So it is just the most common way that FDA approves novel medical devices. It's a very complex process where you're really telling the story of a medical device and its design. So when you're doing that, you're pulling together many different documents and you're meeting many different regulatory requirements. And it's really the summation of your design controls and your quality management system. And with that, you're telling a story that really comes from multiple sources. You're telling stories about biocompatibility, about software, about hardware, wireless coexistence testing. The list goes on and on. And so obviously this sets the stage that this just takes a lot of time to tell the story, to tell it accurately. It's prone to have a lot of gaps and be missing a lot of information. And then obviously this leads us into the risk where when you have these gaps in information, you're going to have to dig and find out what the truth is. You're going to have to tell the story in a different way, and you're going to have to see what you're missing against the backdrop of what FDA is required, because there are just so many extensive guidances. Kyle touched on software as a medical device. There's a lot of expertise because there's a lot of software as medical devices that get reviewed by the FDA, but it's because there's so much documentation expectation for any amount of software within a device that FDA has outlined. So obviously this has led the FDA itself to kind of like start a modernization process. So in my time working as a regulatory specialist, it was actually a paper-based system back in 2015, and that had its own difficulties, as you can imagine. But even in the electronic age, there is such a high expectation of kind of that perfect story that gets told when you submit to FDA. And they have their own vehicles that we'll touch on here in a second in how you tell that story and how the RookAi tool comes into play and makes a significant game-changing tool available to medical device manufacturers on that journey. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that modernization process for a quick sec so that everyone can have the context necessary to understand how the RookAi tool comes into play and makes such a significant difference. So like I said, when I first started in regulatory, it was a paper-based submission, and that was extremely difficult. FDA, very recently, actually, so they're still a couple of years behind, but they actually developed a pretty smart, well-crafted PDF essentially that has a lot of JavaScript enabled in the background, a lot of code that it links to guidances, and it does get regularly updated. It's called the eStar. It's an electronic submission template, as its name kind of implies, its acronym stands for. And basically, what it assists, though, its main function is to ensure that what you provided to FDA is complete in the scope of what they're reviewing. So for example, if you say that your device has software, then you'll automatically get a question saying, is it connect to the cloud? And if you say yes, then you'll automatically get a prompt that says you have to submit these different cybersecurity documents. But however, that PDF template, although it really modernized the FDA, still poses a number of significant challenges because it's really just a kind of a first pass tool to check if you've attached all the necessary items. It does not do it does not do any of the substantive review to check what you attached or what you provided. It's also really difficult to collaborate with each other. And again, yeah, that content, that depth of review, and that's where the RookAI tool comes into play and allows you to get that substantive review. And we'll see that here in a second. And what's really nice about the tool specifically in terms of logistics is you're able to upload the whole eStar PDF and it's able to kind of digest the attachments within it. So it can do kind of a full pass review of the entire eStar PDF. So in terms of, this is a new tool that we're rolling out. The Rook standard though goes through a certain approach for every 510K. As Kyle said, we go through many regulatory submissions through the year, and that's always obviously the first question that the eStar assists us with is making sure that everything is completed. And then our next question is that it's of quality and meets the application. But that's really like the next step that the RookAI tool allows us to zone in on and be more efficient and more effective at is the RookAI tool incorporates that in-depth review of the content that's attached to the eStar. And so it's not just looking if it's complete, but it actually reviews it against a standard set of what FDA expects for each document and provides AI ML enabled commentary. And so you can actually have it comment on the FDA QSR applicability, the ISO 1345, MDSAP. You can have it comment from a number of different perspectives, and we're actually able to continue to develop it. So even as FDA updates their guidances, we're able to significantly increase the rigor with which we're able to assess the content that's uploaded to the eStar PDF. And so the RookAI tool, just like other AI ML enabled tools, will only continue to develop as it's rolled out and continues to be used, and we continue to improve upon it. So I'm really, really excited about the launch and the future.
Jumping in a little bit. So some of the key areas of the Rook AI tool and how we designed it and developed this is really, based on what Tyler was saying. We've seen these pain points from working with our clients, from interacting with eStars and having teams, multiple subsets where somebody's trying to review one section and somebody's trying to review another section, and just the process of accessing the eStar and reviewing it and getting feedback and red lines can be very, very difficult. So that was one of the first things. We looked at tools for more auditing scope and more kind of gap analysis, but this is really the one that's stuck out in our mind is this is something that can be created and efficient and works directly with a pain point as far as the eStar package and the ability to review that full eStar PDF with all of your content, all of your attachments, and get actionable feedback very quickly. So this again can review the full eStar package for your submission. It completes a check against the required documentation. So just making sure that, hey, if you checked yes in this box, or if you need to have attachments for this risk analysis or this data sheet, it'll pull that and make sure that you have those required documentation. It also checks for evaluation of claims and consistency throughout the submission. I think that's one area where in the past, especially like Kylie was saying with the paper-based versions of submissions and in previous versions, having, your intended use and your indications and your claims, those documentations and those sections of your submission get repeated over and over again. So making sure that you're being consistent throughout the submission and presenting the same information in each section properly is one of the things that AI is really good at verifying that that is complete and consistent throughout the submission. The identification of gaps or weakness. So it also provides a score saying, hey, this is a weak area. This is an area where you should provide more content. And so it's able to do that during the submission as well, right? So I actually able to review the submission and provide areas that either look good in the green or areas that are weak and need additional content, additional information before you're actually submitting this eStar. And then it is aligned with both the content from the eStar tool as well as the actual guidances. You can actually select certain guidances that are in the software currently. And as Tyler said, we have the capability to add additional guidances very quickly as well. So as the FDA puts out more information, puts out new guidances, right? There's a few that come, every few months. We're able to update this AI tool to be compliant with the latest expectations. I think that's something we've seen recently as well, as a lot of times FDA will update the eStar template itself, especially in the scope of cybersecurity and software documentation. And there's not a ton of publicity around it, but if you're in the process of just creating submissions in the eStar and routing them through FDA, frequently you start to notice these little tweaks. And so the same thing will be accounted in our AI tool that you can make sure you're up to date with the latest eStar, latest guidances, things like that as well. Impact on medtech teams. So this is another, a very exciting part of this tool is how this is going to be used and how this impacts AI, the medtech teams using it. So reduces manual review. I think that's one of the big things and one of the big key areas of people that use AI frequently is it's just much more efficient. You can get output in, a few minutes, right? So much faster review time, eliminates reviewer fatigue, and ensures consistency across the submission. I think as anybody that's prepared a 510(k), when you're working on it for weeks or months, right, you get just too close to it and you assume that this section's good because I reviewed it a few weeks ago, but you don't always go through that full review of making sure everything's correct, all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed type thing. So having another quick check to go through and say we uploaded this and it's giving us an output in a few minutes is really valuable for our teams that we've already used this on multiple submissions, and it's been very valuable to provide that quick feedback. Efficiency and time saving, again, same thing. This will increase the likelihood of a first pass acceptance with the FDA. So we've seen the same thing. We're able to use this for submissions that we are preparing for our clients and have this tool provide valuable feedback and information that we can then edit and update before we actually submit to the FDA. Worst case, you don't want to submit your submission and get some quick questions. There's no longer an RTA process thanks to the eStar, but you still can get some quick feedback from the FDA if there's big gaps. And the AI tool helps catch those and prevent you from submitting and then getting a quick question or feedback from your reviewer. Other thing is it, actually is cost reduction, right? So it reduces work of your internal team, reduces, additional consulting hours, and it's got a low fixed cost model for predictable use, right? So easy to implement into your current practice. You don't necessarily have to be a Rook client to use RookAi. We're bringing on clients that are doing their own submission and they just want to use the tool for a quick review. And you get the access to the tool, but you also get the Rook team doing that review as well. So cost reduction. We've seen a lot of regulatory submissions that we worked on where we still send it out and have somebody else review it as well, or somebody sends it to us to have a final review before they submit. And this is another tool in that same scope where you can use the AI functionality to do that quick review as well. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Tyler and let him walk through some of the actual workflow and slides of the AI tool. So these are actual screenshots from the AI tool and us using the tool.
Yeah, so it's got a really user-friendly, it's a web portal, so it's a web-based system. Um, and it has a little profile so you can actually, share projects amongst different users depending on the number of chairs and how it's set up. And then you create new projects. So you create a specific project for your product, your medical device that you're developing the 510(k) for, and then you name it, and it's living, and it's nice because it's like you can tell that the AI is starting. It's similar to any large language model. It takes time for the software to digest all that content and start generating the responses based on, its internal algorithm and its processing and analyzing against the guidances that you choose to analyze against. Yeah, and here's a really exciting part where you can kind of specify the different specific areas of the unique attributes that you want it to be audited against is how the software states it, but and it's related to how I was saying you can audit it against, for example, if you want to see how it stacks up against the QMSR requirements, or if you just want to see how it stacks up against ISO 1345, or if it's the 510K substantial equivalence. And then you can kind of further customize it. So you pick your first audit scope on that first page, and then within that audit scope, you customize it. So we're here in the second page, you customize within the 510K audit scope is to which aspects, like for example, if you know that you're not going to have like I remember there's like an abbreviated 510K section, and there's a bunch of guidances that the LLM knows about. You can obviously uncheck that box just because you just don't need that. And so that's really nice. And again, this will be what it will look like in the future as different scopes and different customized attributes as new guidances come out, and the back part gets updated with those new guidances. You can specify, for example, if you're working on like a biocompatibility an implantable device, and you're curious if you can upload the against that guidance that gets released, then you'll be able to select from this audit scope.
Yeah, in addition to that, there are kind of preset scopes as well. So if you have a 510K, there's a preset audit scope. So, hey, this is a 510K review, upload the star, and you can go through that whole review of all of the pre-defined 510K review scope. So some of the QMSR, MBSAP, little outside the scope of the actual regulatory submission. You can still review some of those for compliance as well, but there is a predefined 510K module that you can review that quickly once you upload your eStar.
Yeah, then this is what it looks like when you get your output. It gives you an instant kind of score, which is really nice to get an idea of just maybe if your organization wants to go by KPIs on how well defined you are for each different attribute of the 510K review standard. And then one of the most exciting parts actually is the policy assistant, which is more of like kind of a it's similar to how people think about AI and ML. It's similar to ChatGPT, where it kind of asks you a few priming questions to get some additional input on how the content was generated or how you thought about writing it, and then it will actually output some specific feedback to your results, like how you wrote it, and give you further ideas if you want to improve it. Because there's no such thing as a perfect 510K. So you could input 510K that's extremely complete, but this thing will always kind of suggest, hey, why don't you approach it from here and get your regulatory team, or if you're using a consultant, kind of additional feedback to strengthen your arguments, which is really nice. So I really enjoy that policy assistant output. Okay, so we'll talk about some of the specific use cases of how this would be used. As everyone knows, Rook Quality Systems can provide a full 510K review. It's how things have been done in consulting, but now there's kind of a hybrid approach to this. So it's really helpful to have another tool in the tool belt, and kind of using the RookAi tool as kind of the first path. So in effect, it's kind of nice because it's a pre-submission with the FDA, kind of like a first flight to see how it goes, without actually having to burn much man hours or to potentially have a formal pre-submission with the FDA. And then obviously, in conjunction with a regulatory expert, say from like Rook, then uh, you have that dual approach where you get both the AI helping to generate content, and then you get a regulatory expert to kind of further, like if you actually wanted to make the edits to the regulatory content, you have someone who can actually start that process, and has like the tribal knowledge if you needed to provide context. So I think together it's just going to be a kind of just like how everyone uses ChatGPT is kind of a bit of a strengthening of both sides, where the LLM continues to grow in strength, but obviously you kind of use it as a feedback loop to strengthen our own expertise as well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we really want to make sure everyone's aware is right. So we've heard of people using AI for 510Ks. We've heard of people using AI to create QMS and other output risk analysis, right? But in testing that and looking at other tools in the market, there's big gaps, there's hallucinations, there's people that assume that what they get from the AI is correct because they've never done it before. And that's a big risk, right? If you're wanting to submit something like that that's straight from AI generation, to an auditor or to a reviewer, then there's a big risk, right? So Rook has not only the AI tool to do the full review, but then we have the regulatory experts that review it as well. So we review not only the output from the AI in alignment with our review, and we also review, a high-level review of the 510(k) submission as well. So there's much less risk of hallucination or anything from the AI, and you get the expert sign off from the Rook team when you're going through this approach. So I think it's a really a more comprehensive path compared to what's out there with other AI tools in the market or other ones that are being developed. Or like Tyler said, if you're just wanting to use, one of the chat GPTs or Geminis to go through your submission or go through your content without the full context. So this was created specifically for medical device, specifically for 510(k) review, but then also has the full team regulatory expert of the Rook team to review before getting back to your submission. So that is one key area. I think there's potential down the road where AI will be able to do all this. I think it's still a few years away, but having the hybrid approach to the full 510(k) review, much more confident that you'll be ready to submit and you'll have a good outcome from your submission. And if there are gaps, we'll catch it right as well. So I'm really excited about that scope as well. And then, practical use cases as well. So I think this is back to you, Tyler.
Yeah, I kind of covered this a little bit in its application, but like I said, it's kind of nice to have a formal pre-submission without having to go through the FDA because that's commonly a way kind of a pre-submission is used is like kind of a pre-check on a 510(k), and it's nice to have that ability from an LLM to check holistically how the submission looks, and then obviously using it for review of the 510(k) and eStar. And then the other latter use cases, as you build up more and more knowledge, is continually using it and seeing the output and developing before your official 510(k) submission goes into the FDA. That's the other obvious use case.
Yeah, and we've also had, internal where we've used it, do the first pass submission, like you said, and then clean up some of the things that we got feedback from, right? And say, hey, we did make some updates to the device description and we added more detail in the substantial equivalence table and submitted again and got higher scores on those sections after the second review. So I think that's kind of the most likely model where people will use this is you get a package for two reviews, you submit it first and get the feedback, and then you work, whether that's internally or you have the Rook team supporting as well, and do that final review before you submit. So you get kind of the final check off, everything's good. There might be some minor tweaks, and then you're ready to submit this final submission and go through the process of FDA review and the timelines associated with that. And yeah, so where this fits in. So we talked about this a little bit, but RookAi is a tool specifically for this purpose, right? AI is not for everything, especially in the regulated space of med device quality and regulatory. But this is a purpose-built tool specifically for medical device regulatory requirements and specifically for the eStar document that is used for the majority of submissions, right? So it's really hyper-focused on a pain point we've identified working with hundreds of or thousands of clients over the past 15 years. And one thing that we think is really going to be beneficial for the industry. It also complements your team, right? So it's something that makes it much more efficient for the final review, increases consistency, and can help catch any gaps or issues in your submission much faster, much earlier, and you get that quick feedback. And then there's kind of the multiple use case, right? So you can do an in-process review, where are we at? How close are we? And then you do that final check review as well. I think it's also, good with the teams where, they got the team heavy involved with the submission, but then they need kind of the sign off from the director or the CEO. And you can use this as kind of that double check to say, hey, we did get an independent review of this submission before we submitted to the FDA and got a good score from the RookAi and the Rook expert review prior to submitting. So you have that kind of hybrid model where you can still write a lot of your 510(k) internally and then use this as kind of the final check before your submission. So I think that's one thing that we're excited. I did see a question that came in earlier, whether or not you have to work with Rook directly to use this tool. So this is something that you can use separate of an engagement with Rook. So you will have the access to licensing the tool and using it for your submission review or a dual review. And then you get the expert Rook team reviewing alongside the AI, and that completed review and feedback will be part of that output. This is something that's launching in January. So if you're interested, it's definitely something that you should reach out, and we'll have our contact information on the next slide. So any other kind of parting thoughts, Tyler, before we go to Q&A, as far as kind of how this fits in, how you're going to use it? I know you are, regulatory director at Rook. You review a lot of submissions, you process a lot of submissions. Kind of any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I think it's helpful because yeah, I have to review like we have a whole regulatory team, so there's a lot of times I get asked to do a review, and it's nice to get a quick gut check. And kind of like what I harped on just a second ago, that policy assistant output is really helpful. I enjoy it, and it's kind of like a smaller appearance in the GUI, but like in terms of the output, it's extremely valuable because you can see that's where a lot of the LLM is analyzing those FDA guidances and kind of like probing my mind, the mind of the author of the document that's being reviewed to further improve the quality. And kind of like I said, there's no such thing as a perfect submission. And you just want to continually improve so that you have the best case argument when you do submit to FDA.
All right. Had a few questions coming through. Let me switch back to the slide. So here, before we jump into questions, contact info. So you got my email, you got Tyler's email, our website, and our info email. So definitely reach out with any questions as we're going. If you have additional questions, you can also put them in the chat now. I think we covered David's initial question is if you're not currently working with Rook, can you still use this? So yes, it will be. It will have its own website. You can sign up to use it, and then we'll provision it for your actual use case. If there are deficient in certain areas, does it give corrections or recommendations? So it does provide recommendations, but that's also where kind of the Rook expert team fits in as well, right? So our regulatory consultants and experts would also provide recommendations for the identified gaps, right? So saying, hey, you can add some information to this area, or you might consider this type of testing if that's not in your submission. We had a question from Danielle on are we developing something similar for EU MDR tech file review? I can take that. I think, yeah, so that is something we're looking at as well. So I know that the tech file review and the CER review are two areas that are also similar to eStar in that they have a lot of different pieces, a lot of standards you need to check off, and a lot of kind of review from your technical reviewer as well. And there are ways to improve that efficiency. That is something we are working on as well. We've been in development with this AI tool for about 9 months now. So we're continuing to add and finalize all the guidances related to eStar and be able to add those quickly. The eStar format, I think, is really what makes this so efficient, is it is all collected in one file that can allow for a quicker submission. But we are definitely interested in the EU MDR technical file and clinical evaluation report and a kind of gap analysis tool within that scope as well.
Yeah, along those lines, I saw a question come in around de novos. So luckily the eStar is also used for de novos. So it can, and like a lot of the review aspects between de novo and a 510K are actually quite similar in terms of describing the technological characteristics and those technical reviews. And so those guidances are the same between 510K and de novo. And like I said, there's the ability to continue to build out on the back end the guidances. Like these, you kind of remove the substantial equivalence paradigm and you plug in the benefits and risks discussion that the de novo presents. But you can definitely use it for like the software aspects, the electrical aspects that would be mirrored over.
All right. And then we had a question like this from Aryan. Really cool demo. Seeing some worry or see, I've been seeing some kind of worries about AI use and compliance work. I think one of the management consultants got in trouble for this. How much do you guys use this tool versus your own expertise? And has the FDA been okay with this documentation, or is it a red flag?
I can chime in here. I think it's definitely one of those things in the end, humans need to be accountable for what's being submitted. So obviously, at the end of an E-Star, there's a big sign page that says that you are legally held to the truthfulness and accuracy of what you've put in terms of content. So that should never be understated. And I said this earlier, but like the use of AI ML should only enhance the human directed work. It should never replace. So obviously, like, that that combination of liability and responsibility are critical. So obviously, to give some behind the scenes, I personally always will still do a deep pass of a 510K, and the Rook AI tool will never like subsume my in-depth check of a 510K, but instead will give me prioritization of what to look at first, or instant feedback like, hey, if it doesn't pass this, it's like, well, then the intended use is this not up to snuff, and this is what the LLM thinks, and I agree, or I don't agree because it's just getting this mixed up, and we need to switch this formatting around, for example.
Yeah, and that just kind of highlights again that this tool is not, actually writing the 510K, it's just reviewing, right? So it's providing a quick review and recommendations, and then we also have the hybrid approach where the Rook regulatory experts are providing a review as well, right? So there's much less risk of um, there being some sort of, situation where you're submitting AI generated content to the FDA as part of your submission, right? You're still either generating your own 510K or working with Rook to generate the 510K and then going through the review rather than having that. I think that is another area that we kind of have evaluated other AI tools that are on the market or being developed. And I think there's still that risk of companies wanting to let AI develop or write or generate content in this regulated space and med device. I don't think it's close to that being a reality, right? So this is more of a review and a review against the actual standards, guidances, regulations, requirements, and that's one of the key areas AI is really good at currently, right? So I think that's why this is really a exciting sweet spot of providing quick review, providing expertise, but then having the regulatory expert double check as well. We did have a few questions around pricing. So yeah, send us your email and we'll follow up directly with you on pricing and how it fits for what type of submission, how many reviews you need, things like that. And we'll generate that pricing quote for you and then go from there. Yeah, and I think we mentioned earlier, so EU MDR is another area we're looking at, also just kind of a broader audit tool as well for ongoing compliance. So if we don't have any other questions, I don't see any more, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks everyone for joining again. Our contact info is here. Feel free to reach out and we'll again, publish this on our website and share the recording and slides with everyone that joined. Thank you all.